Welcome into the Fantasy Football Happy Hour set. Jake Crouch along with Matthew Barron. Of course, we're joined now by our friend and colleague, the legend, Peter King, Football Morning in America, and of course, the general manager of the Montclair Pedroias, which is still one of my favorite fantasy baseball team names.
Well, we stunk this year. I was in first place around July 1st. We ended up finishing 6th. Is it possible to have every player on your team go into the worst slump of his career? If that's possible, that happened on the Pedroias this year.
I think that is what happened. Also, by the way, that's when football ramps up. I struggled when I was doing fantasy baseball because once football starts ramping up, you start, and
I know.
it's always tough.
I will say this. I will say this, Matthew. If I am in it, I'd be on my training camp trip, and every Sunday night when we have to pick our lineup for the week, my Football Morning in America column can wait because I'm going to set my lineup and go figure out who's the third saves guy on the Blue Jays.
Because you've got priorities. You've got your priorities right.
That has been important to me for the last 20 years.
You're one of us. That's why we love
baseball.
you.
Yeah. Peter, I'm not sure how much you've spoken to Matthew about baseball in the past, but his knowledge is stuck in about 2008. So his baseball takes are all built around Sean Figgins and Garrett Anderson and since departed LA.
That's
well,
pretty funny.
fantasy baseball is how Peter and I originally met back when I worked at ESPN, and then I would give him some advice, and then we transitioned to football, and of course now we're colleagues. Peter was part of the team that said, you got to come over to NBC. I called him when I was trying to figure out what I want to do, and he was just like, you got to come here. It's going to be awesome. And thank you again for that advice.
It
has been awesome. It's been great.
Yeah.
It's been
All
great.
Right. Well, pivoting away from Sean Figgins and talking about Kyle Shanahan.
Tim Salmon.
Yeah, you're a big Tim Salmon guy, I know. So Kyle Shanahan, you recently did a piece on him, picked his brain on a car ride. Any biggest takeaways from that and anything that didn't make the article?
The biggest takeaway, I think, is how close the 49ers were to not picking Brock Purdy. Now, remember, the 262nd and final pick in the 22 draft, you got to remember the previous year, they had really sold the farm to move up to get Trey Lance. So there wasn't a lot of people in the organization who felt, hey, let's draft another quarterback this year. Yeah, if you want to go find one in undrafted free agency, fine, but there's no way. We can't do that this year. But Shanahan was sitting in the draft room, and he heard it from everybody in the room. Hey, listen, we got this linebacker who could start for us. We got this running back. We got this. And finally, John York, the chairman of the 49ers, is sitting there and said, Kyle, who's the best player on the board? And he goes, well, there's no question. It's this Purdy, quarterback from Iowa State. And York said to him, what are we talking about then? Take the best player. That's who you should take. So had Dr. York not said that, I think there's a real chance he might have been pressured into not picking him. So they picked him, and the rest is history.
Was there any conversation between the Niners and Purdy? Because if they don't pick him, then he is a free agent, and there's still a chance.
He was not. He is told Kyle.
Okay.
That I was not coming to you guys. Because look, think about it.
He didn't think he had a shot at just start.
Of course,
right?
Of course.
You got Garoppolo and you got Trey Lance.
You want to go to a team where you can see there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Sure.
There was no light at the end of this tunnel. But Matthew, I think one of the things that Shanahan did not say to me, but that I felt, is that he was already having some questions, a lot of questions about Trey Lance. The one thing that I didn't write, that I think I'm going to write in my column this coming week, is I talked to Shanahan. For some reason, we got into gambling. And I just asked him the question, it was something like, this is impossible to figure out who's going to win. He goes, that's why I'm totally shocked at how big gambling is. He said, I don't know who's going to win these games. And I enter every game, I have a really good feel on how I think it's going to go. The vast majority of games don't go that way. And he goes, so that's why I think, I don't know how, he wasn't railing against gambling. He just said, I don't know how anybody gambles on these games because the people inside the games truly don't know how they're going to go.
Well, the way they gamble on the games is that they're degenerates, and like Jay and I. But by the way, that's why literally the best bettors in the world win 55, 60% of the time. Like, it's that hard to do. Like, the people that do it for a living that are crunching the number, like
if you win 60% of the time, you'd be a millionaire, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and there are millionaires out there who bet on the NFL for a living.
I can't believe. I don't see it.
But they're few and far between.
It's the point. It's not even the 0.1%. It's the 0.01% who are able to do that. But talking about this game and why it is so confusing. And look, the Niners they're 2-point favorites. Game's a coin flip, basically, and that's what the betting market is saying. And I think that's what everyone who follows football is saying. But the reason why it is a coin flip, I think, is because Brock Purdy is still something of an unknown, which is crazy because we've seen him play at a borderline MVP level. I think if he'd beaten Baltimore on Monday night on Christmas Day, he probably would have won MVP. But he looks shaky against Green Bay for 3.5 quarters. He looks shaky in the first half against Detroit. It's weird, though, because he's a young quarterback who seems to get rattled in the first half, and then he comes good when the lights are brightest in the second half. So I guess, what are you expecting from Brock Purdy? Do you think there is a chance that the lights could just be too bright on Sunday for him?
I mean, there's a chance because we've never seen him in a game of this magnitude, whereas Mahomes plays in one of these games every 10 minutes.
It seems
and you've never seen Mahomes. I shouldn't say never, but he has not thrown many dumb interceptions in big games. Of course, everybody succumbs to whatever, but that's why, to me, I think this is such a tough game to pick because Brock Purdy, Shanahan told me on this car ride, he said the most impressive thing about him is that none of all this stuff, none of it has any effect on him. And he goes, he's an assassin in all of these games when you would say, oh, my God, he's in the NFC Championship game. Now, you're right, though. Is it possible, and I think it is possible, is it possible he could dig himself a bigger hole than 24-7? Now, I doubt that'll happen, but is it possible he'll dig himself a hole that the 49ers can't get themselves out of in the second half? Of course. But I think both quarterbacks are going to play well in this game. And I kind of think Mahomes will win and Kansas City will win just because I've seen Mahomes do it time after time after time.
We only have a few minutes left, Peter, so I want to be selfish here.
Yeah.
I want to ask about my Commanders. It seemed like, from my non-insider point of view, seemed like they were all in on Ben Johnson. Somewhere that went south, and they were sort of like, the last chair standing. They were sort of left with Dan Quinn, and now Cliff Kingsbury sort of out of nowhere. Give me your sense of what you've heard from all of your contacts in terms of the coaching staff in Washington, what went down there. And as a Commanders fan, I'm a lifelong fan of Washington. Should I have hope?
In my opinion, I think Cliff Kingsbury is a really, really interesting hire. And Matthew, I'll never forget the first conversation I ever had with Kingsbury when he was a rookie coach in Arizona. And he said, we will run the ball very well. I wasn't expecting to hear that. Sorry. I was not expecting that at all because you think of him, he fills the air with footballs.
Sure.
Mahomes, all these guys. He will build a top 5 running game in Washington. He will do that. That will be his priority. And if I were a Washington fan, I'd be happy with that. You know why?
Okay.
Because I don't know who's playing quarterback, but it's either going to be a very high-profile rookie or it's going to be a veteran who you really don't trust that much. So what do you do when you have a quarterback who is either on the job training or he's a guy you don't trust very much? Build a great running game. That is what I like about what the Commanders did.
All right, well, good. I have hope. I feel better now. And as a dynasty manager of Brian Robinson, I like that even more. We have to go now, Peter, so I just want to get your quick 10-second reaction to my bold prediction, which is Chiefs win the Super Bowl, Andy Reid retires, and the Chiefs announce Bill Belichick as their next head coach.
Andy Reid's not retiring.
Okay.
But if he did retire, Belichick to Kansas City would not surprise me. The key thing, if that did happen, and I joke when I say he's not going to retire. I really don't think he's going to retire. He might. But there's one thing about that. If he does retire and Belichick takes the job, Belichick should not touch the offensive staff. Because Matt Nagy, people got down on him in Chicago, and I get it. I understand that. You know what Matt Nagy did to the Chicago Bears this year, or to the Kansas City Chiefs this year when they weren't playing well in New England?
Yeah.
He pulled a play that they called Heisman out of an Ivy League football game from 1942. And I'm not exaggerating. He did. He found some tape of a play that was like a single wing play that they installed, and the players ran it and scored a touchdown in New England. So don't touch the offensive staff. That would be my only piece of advice. But nice, bold prediction.
I like that. I'll take that as well. My piece of advice is to read Football Morning in America every single Monday on NBCSports.com. The legend, Peter King. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.